Choosing a thing I like to review is difficult. Not for finding things to talk about in the review or finding things I can review. The issue for me is, can I bring something new to discussion, or can I explain why it's good so that people watch it on the recommendation? Of course, the issue with this one is it's Japanese superheroes. Tokusatsu, as it's known by the fanbase, is two superhero shows inspired by this.
地獄からの使者スパイダーマン父とガリアの復讐を俺が果たす
These two shows have been running for about 50 years, Super Sentai and Kamen Rider. Most people will actually recognize Super Sentai as Power Rangers. Was taken by Saban and then ported over to the US using the same footage with slight changes and reworks of old costumes. It's complicated. I'm not trying to get into it here, just letting you know. This is the original. We will focus on Kamen Rider for now, as I don't really care that much for Super Sentai, as it's more of a team-based affair, and as such interests me less. Kamen Rider was made by Shotaro Ishimori and premiered in April 1971, which its next anniversary is coming up real soon. Since that original season, there has been 30 plus series spread out over the course of the past 50 years, and has been annual since the year 2000. About 3 years ago, in a major depressive state due to, let's say, a multitude of reasons for monetizability. But yeah, in my state, that meant I was just perusing the usual discords until one day I saw a group of people watching Kamen Rider Xaid. And like a fish in a good fishing minigame, I was hooked. Since then, I've watched about 12 series, bought several belts, found a favorite season, Kamen Rider OOO. OOO ran from September 2010 to August the next year for a total of 48 episodes. The basic concept is after a temp job as a security guard, a transient man, Eiji, is bestowed the power of Kamen Rider OOO by one of the ancient evils, also known as the Greed, for currently unknown reasons. He is assisted by the mysterious Kugami organization, but for a price. I would say from here on out we're going to get into major spoilers, so I'll play some out-of-context clips just to sell you on it. Oh god, this is probably going to be a fucking nightmare of copyright claims. Although, I think Toei is still in trouble with the attacking of fair use DBZ videos. Let's test it by playing the opening. I'm kidding. Music is a completely different ballgame and will absolutely get my thing flagged. As I've said in the past, I know jack shit about music, and that still stands true here. But, similar to when you see someone do something skilled really well, like Tony Hawk nailing a fucking cool-ass move, or a skilled pianist playing whatever fucking sonata, I can tell this fucking slaps. The beat is cheerful and upbeat, the scenes are bright and colorful, and have symbology that'll continue to appear for the rest of the show. We'll get to that later. And the vocalists are also putting in their all. The intro does update as more writers and concepts are introduced, but the core basically remains the same, starting with OOO riding on the vendor bike, and ending with Eiji hitting the sand to reveal the core metals, which we'll also get to. So when I decided to review this, I was trying to cut down to the bare essentials, so I didn't need to pull every episode for clips. I guess I'll just explain what my parameters for crucial episodes was. Basically anything that was more than just standard Monster of the Week episodes, but surprising, most episodes had some level of importance. Like the first 7 episodes alone were all introduced something new in each one, which is most of the first act, and the only reason 8 isn't technically counted is it's the continuation of episode 7, which I'd say is to some level important. And this does kind of literally keep on going throughout the entire show. There'll be slight shifts in dynamics and certain things where it's just like, oh, this is not just a gimmick, or it's literally just like an episode that will never need to see the light of day. There is little filler in this. According to the wiki, there is 3 arcs in the 48 episode season, but where I disagree with the wiki is where the split is. Before going further in depth on episode recaps and all that stuff, I will set the basic talking points for the story section of the thing. I'm not going for history of Power Rangers level recap, so don't be expecting that. This is trying to sell you on it without explaining everything about the events. The split for Arc 1 is the first 2 episode recap, characters introduced in the series, major villains, and the general point of Toku, and with the finale of the arc being recapped as well. Arc 2 will be more general summary, as it's definitely where more standard Monster of the Week tropes kind of just start to play out. It will be introing anything crucially new, and then we'll talk about character dynamics, and after the final bit of the arc is recapped for you, and I will basically just be like, hey, this is where our characters will be heading towards, and it'll be up to you to watch the final 8 or 9 episodes, and then the anniversary movie, the 10-year later special, and anything else that you might think is relevant to the creation of this stuff. Why is it not a full summary? Well, short answer is the script has actually been well over a year in production, and I have just needed to actually get it out, and frankly, I'm forcing it out at a certain point. Arc 1 is the basic setup, 1 to 18, also known as the Revive of Greed, Birth of Ooze, and the Scramble of Metals. It's where the general concept of the show is displayed, major players in the show, heroes and villains, and some side characters are all introduced, and we're also given a few mysteries to be answered over the course of the series. The first episode starts with a display of human greed, a robbery of a museum by its own security guards, who drugged the new guy so that he gets all the blame.
気づかれるぞ。ほら、今日入ったバイトの。
大丈夫だ。薬でぐっすりだ。
As they sneak about, we see a floating arm made of coins grab something from a sarcophagus on display in said museum. And with the sarcophagus tampered with, evil is unleashed, as well as a separate alarm going out to a different set of guards than the one that are in the museum. The sarcophagus turns into a collection of 4 forms made of coins. The auxiliary guards, who we will call the Ride Vendor Squad, show up to shoot the figures to little effect, or no effect in most instances. Meanwhile, a man in a high-rise makes a case while listening to radio chatter from said vendor squad. Seeing the original plan fail, the vendor squad changes tactics and decides to blow up the building. The figures, however, escape, and the squad are for the most part wiped out. The Cake Boss reveals the names of these beings as Greed, as he wishes them I'll also note here that the greed is spelled with 3 E's. Just make note of that. It's important. The temp guard that was knocked out awakens after all the chaos of the past, let's say, hour. He finds a red coin that fell there in the chaos, presumes it's his pay for the entire event, and goes to leave. He hangs up his uniform and... Yeah, we talked about the intro. We'll skip forward for this time. We see a police officer questioning the temp guard named Eiji Hino about the events, and Eiji does his best to recount them in a very friendly manner.
命には別状ないらしい。よかった。顔怖いけどジュースとかおごってくれたりいい人たちなんですよ。付き合い長いの。今朝からです。
I'll get further into his character after the first episode recap, especially as a dynamic with characters that are not shown yet. But what should be known is Eiji is homeless and doing odd jobs, with only tomorrow's underwear in his possession.
いけますって。ちょっとのお金と明日のパンツあれば。
We see the hand return properly formed in brilliant red following Eiji, probably after that red coin. Back to Cake Boss. By the way, I tried to find any clips of Cake Boss bumpers, but couldn't seem to. Cake Boss speaks very plainly about his belief that the birth of the greed, at least in his mind, isn't explicitly a bad thing, seeing as the birth of anything into this world is wonderful to him. We see the cloth from the OP appear in a returning visual, along with the villain's musical sting, and the 4 figures also in their proper forms. These are our main villains for a majority of the season. They mention another character named Ankh, who seems to have taken something called a core metal. We'll get back to these 4 villains as Eiji thinks about where tomorrow's underwear will come from, as he pulls out the red coin and accidentally drops it under one of the ride vendor machines. Another of our main characters, Hina, sees Eiji struggling to get under while the hand from earlier also goes for the coin. After some shenanigans, we see that Hina has superhuman strength. And no, it's never explained. We also get to see the hand in full view. And it is, in fact, just a hand. The hand holds the coin we saw earlier and calls it a core metal, so we can presume 1, this is likely Ankh, and 2, color-coded coins like this are plot relevant. I will sidetrack the episode to explain the arm. The show has multiple ways to film the arm for anything it really needs to get filmed. There's at least 2 forms that I have been able to make note of. One is suit actor for anything requiring articulation, and 1 prosthetic arm for anything fast motion, like the arm moving as if it wasn't in fact attached to a body. The suit actor for the arm goes by the stage name Itoku, who has done work for Kamen Rider since about Kamen Rider Ryuki in 2002. Itoku does wonderful pantomime for the arm throughout the season, and I respect him for it. And the voice is also done really well, but we will get to that also later. As the struggle for the red coin continues, we see the green villain, who I'll call Uva even though his name hasn't been said, causing havoc in a jewelry store nearby. Uva senses greed in one of the workers and... This is Yummy, a standard low-level enemy of the season, basic desires made manifest, and working towards whatever goal the greeds are working for in that episode. As the Yummy feeds, it can develop further, gaining a unique form and becoming the monster of the week that our lead has to deal with, while other ones will just kind of just sit there just to be punched. The cops from earlier also hit the Yummy after it leaves the jewelry store through the window, as it's now looking for Uva's core metal, and the cops decide to also follow after it. Ankh chases Eiji down, who doesn't seem to connect the dots on basically the full events of the museum, but before actually explaining anything further, the Yummy strikes. Being just an arm, Ankh is basically just thrown around the shopping center before Eiji decides to intervene, to also little effect. The cops also show up, guns blazing, to even more equally little effect, showing basically how dangerous this enemy is, as the standard police can't seem to stop it. Eiji, seeing the best in people, distracts the Yummy by taking several massive hits to the face. Ankh, seeing his rube exterior, believes Eiji can be used, hands Eiji the item that he grabbed at the beginning of the episode off the top of the sarcophagus. He also hands him 2 core medals, letting him use the red one he grabbed earlier.
Henshin.
Behold, Kamen Rider Ooze, form Tataba, coming from the portmanteau of the 3 creatures in Japanese's names. This is the most common form he uses, starting here and swapping out coins as he needs for each battle for whatever enemy he is dealing with at the time. As the fight proper starts, we see the same coin that Uva was put into the lady fall out of the monster in much greater numbers. These are cell metals. They are a source of power supplementary to core metals and are the main driving force of the early episodes. Ankh decides to possess one of the unconscious detectives and... This is Ankh's standard form. We'll continue to see the floating arm from time to time, but this is how he usually looks for the majority of the show. As a kicker, the actor looks more like the possessed form in real life, so I'm really glad that actor got to choose a character that he looks like. The phone that is ringing in one scene, and as we see Hina again, learning that the possessed detective is actually her brother. To end the episode, we hear Cake Boss singing Happy Birthday again, this time to Ooze. We see the remaining ride vendor summon a flock of birds, and to end the episode, a wonderful design made to remind us what forms that Ooze can currently use, which will shift over the course of the series. Episode 2 starts with a recap, as weekly shows typically need a reminder. We see the birds take the cell medals to Cake Boss, showing he's been accruing them for quite a while, presumably since the last time this evil was awoken. Intro time again. I'll be here, you guys go on ahead. Ankh exposition dumps while stealing ice cream, which AJ decides to pay for. A lot of this information has either been explained by me or isn't fully relevant as a full concept, so we'll just move on. Just out of traction, we see the guards behind the museum heist talking about another potential job when... We also see some additional scenes from the Greed, recounting some basic stuff about needing the core metals to gain full power. More reminder than actual crucial to this episode. It's just to let us know that is what they need. Hina finds a job and informs her brother about it, whose phone is currently in Eiji's pocket. The job is run by this wonderful side character who makes her employees dress in costumes no matter how impractical. It's basically a running joke over the course of the series. The Yummy does the robbery the guard from the museum wanted to, and starts to make additional cell metals, and like all Greed, Ankh's able to sense it, with our duo arriving shortly after. However, Ankh doesn't give him the metals to become Ooze because he wants a little bit more cell metals out of the creature, revealing the power of greed comes from, well... Cake Boss is a great monologue and shows the reason for the name Ooze. Ankh plays his hand, saying Eiji is only there to gather medals for Ankh. Eiji responds by having PTSD flashbacks and a major hero complex. After saving a random bystander and almost falling to his death, Eiji uses this moment to push his luck, making Ankh have to secede some ground in their dynamic, showing some of that humanity is even in the greed. The ride vendor character shows up with a gift, specifically the sword that you see in the opening, and shows off some of the uses of the ride vendor for Ooze to use in future, such as the bike and the cans it can summon from inside its thing. We see the sword can slash without causing further damage to the city while being devastating to yummies. And to end the episode, Hina finds her brother, with Ankh being on his arm. The rest of the arc is expansion on the core of the show, expanding Hina, Eiji, and Ankh's characters, showing off more monsters that Ooze must fight and change strategy as needed for new threats, and at the end of the arc, introduction to a new rider. So major characters for Arc 1 are Eiji, Hina, and Ankh, with the villainous Greed, Uva, Kazari, Gamel, and Mezul. Currently helping our protagonist is the Kugami Foundation, ran by Cake Boss named Kusei Kugami, with his high metabolism's assistant, Erika Satonoka, and the remaining ride vendor officer, Shintaro Goto. Halfway through the arc, we are introduced to my favorite character, Dr. Kyoto Maki, a man as obsessed with endings as I am. And in episode 16, my second favorite character, Akira Date, as Kamen Rider Birth, which we'll cover later. The Greed bring interesting variety to the Monster of the Week format, such as Kazari's Parasite Yummy, who hides inside the body of the person it's feeding on, or Mizul's Egg Yummies, which hide their form for longer and, as such, are harder to beat, as well as, when hatching, become large swarms of yummies. I guess this is where I should generally explain something about Toku. As much as I like it as a format for superhero fiction, its main purpose is to sell toys. That's the reason for multiple forms, multiple weapons, additional tools, even the belt itself, is to sell toys. Now, to give this 50-year-old toy behemoth credit, most of the seasons are generally liked, and I would concur. Even if a season runs out of steam, the next one has a new crew with no required connection to the last beyond crossovers. Episode 9 to 10, we are introduced to Dr. Maki, so I'm going to talk a little bit about it, as it is also the next two-parter. An arsonist gets caught up and yummied by Mizul, and sets up bombs in a delayed sequence to cause devastation, draw a crowd, then cause more devastation. At the second bombing location, we see a man in glasses and standard clothes with a doll in his arm in an upward position. By the end of the episode, it's revealed he created the metal system, the Ride Vendor Squad, and all the stuff that our current protagonists use, and has an obsession with endings. He has a painting in his office and ominous music. Doesn't also see casualties as bad, as humans must meet the end of their lives at some point.
終わって初めて人として完成する互いに良き終わりが訪れんこと。
And yes, I'm going to use the doll in the thumbnail. Another thing is, this is where this clip in this episode gets constantly used. Not really any other reason to bring it up, because it does kind of stop being used as often because it was kind of just seen as it's something to mock. Oh, and this scene as well.
ありがたく使わせてもらいますけど、これ以上俺に話しかけないでもらいます。
The arc ends with Kazari, in teaming up with Dr. Maki, has taken multiple core metals from the other Greed and Ankh and put them in Gamel. On top of that, we get to see how the Greed were actually formed, having one of their core metals destroyed to give them the desire for more power. Gamel gives himself up to Mizul, and they become a medley monster that our heroes need to take down. Thankfully, a mysterious new rider shows up using cell metals as a form of energy to damage the beast. This doesn't actually cause major damage, it just does enough to release some of the core metals that Ooze lost at the beginning of the series, so that he can regain them. As we don't get to see his goal until a later episode, I include that episode in the arc. This is Kamen Rider Birth, wielded by Akira Date, a man with a rather simple goal.
これだけ稼ぐために引き受けた。1億。はい。1億稼ぐ。
And yes, Birth has the Iron Man HUD, which I don't remember any future writers doing, so this is either a special exception to him or a special exception to certain people. We see his character develop over the course of the next arc, but we do see the first few glimpses here. Another thing to note, Birth isn't as effective against greed, but can handle most yummies regardless of form by just fighting them. Arc 2, The Man of 100 Million, Redacted, and The Purple Metals, is a bit more standard Monster of the Week format. As for the first few episodes, they're basically just standard with intercross with character moments, so we see Dante's backstory, Goto's motivation, and so on. Some episodes of note is the 1000th episode of Kamen Rider in total, the two-parter related to the Yummy Maid of the Desires of Justice, Dr. Maki's backstory episodes, all of which ties into the overarching mystery related to a group of bird yummies that has started to appear, as well as information about the former user of ooze and his plans for the device. Episode 31, we are introduced to a new greed, the Purple Greed, one that doesn't actually have its own form, but possesses users in its cases. When Ooze uses one of his forms in the episode, just after we're introduced to them, 5 of the purple core metals go into AG, which he can use as a new form when threatened by the newer, much harder yummies formed by the other host of the purple cores, Dr. Maki. The purple yummies also add a new threat to the show, as both new abilities come from them. One type of purple yummy literally can just vaporize humans, and the other destroys ambition, which leads to a coma for the victim of the yummy. The purple cores also act as a standard trope in Toku, which is also known as the deadly upgrade on TV tropes. It's just that common, it will just always be. So, I'll also list some of the other popular Kamen Rider ones. Agito, Kamen Rider Gills. Phase, the entire show. Gaim, most of the show. Build, Hazard Trigger, 01, Metal Cluster. Revice, the back end of the show. You can also call this the don't transform, you'll die trope, because basically someone of the other main cast will also say exactly that repeatedly over the course of the series. For the dynamics, we'll cover main writers and important side characters, so we'll not have a section for each backstory character, although there are a few that should be made of note. Here they are. The standard dynamic of AG and Ankh is the standard good of humanity conflict, with AG always seeing the best in people and trying to fight for the planet's future, and Ankh always seeing the bad side, especially how human greed has, quote, made the whole thing worse. While he's not trying to end the world, he is willing to let his own greed go over the safety of humans, much to AG's displeasure. And in particular, I do want to praise the actors that portray AG and Ankh, as their dynamic wouldn't feel as strong if they didn't nail their performances. Shu Watanabe and Ryosuke Miura, you guys did a wonderful job. Hina in Ankh's dynamic is the tether of humanity. I'll not say it's explicitly done in explicitly a fresh way, but I believe it's still done well, as instead of doing the I know you're still in there trope that's usually pretty common with possession type characters, she is more accepting of the whole situation, but she's going to make sure that he is taking care of her brother's body, at least until he gets better enough to wake up himself, possibly. Another dynamic of note is Ankh and the other greeds. It is standard his temptation to the dark side, as they are more willing to achieve his goals the way he wants to much better results, as he has to make more and more compromises as the series goes on. And with the final important dynamic, Akira Dante and Shintaro Goto go into the standard mentor and mentee dynamic. Dante, having an injury from a war he fought in, has limited time as Kamen Rider Birth, as he spends a good chunk of his time teaching Goto what he needs to do to step into the role after he leaves. After a certain number of episodes of Ooze, Dr. Maki becomes the big bad, with the other greed acting similar to lackeys but with some level of agency underneath him. Of course, the dynamic can shift over the course of the rest of the show, but I'll leave that for you guys to see evolve as it happens. The stage is set for the final arc. Will AG be able to control his Puto Taira form? Or will Dr. Maki be able to become a full greed human combo and make his plan for the ends come to fruition? And who will, at the end of the day, Kugami support in as we go to the end of the show? Before we wrap up this way too long video that doesn't even cover the full series, by the way, I will be willing to cover more Kamen Rider. I don't think, standardly, I will cover finales, as I do think that they're a crucial moment to watch for yourself, as you've currently been watching it, like, live. I do want to cover two major motifs of the series. One's a convention of Toku, the other's a motif built into this season. The first motif is animals, where certain greed creates certain animal yummies. Ankh can make birds, Kazari makes felines, Mizul makes aquatic creatures, Ua makes bugs, so on and so forth. The other season-long motif, it should be obvious. It's in the name. Yeah, it's 3. The episode names have 3 items, the core medals are sets of 3, if you ignore the 10th medal that was technically a retcon. The greed have 3 E's, and of course, U's belt uses 3 cores. The previously on mentions 3 things about the previous episode. TV tropes is not helping at all. Let's just say that when some Japanese devs make occasional puns, that's fucking restraint. They will, if given the chance, saturate the entire program with puns. Hell, I've not even talked about the fact that every bird joke they can do, they do with Ankh.
Tori? Hina-chan ni wa
Kamen Rider Ooze is, well, this. It's fun toku, it's toy sales, it's cheesy plots, it's strong dynamics, it's colorful forms, it's interesting characters, it's extended puns, it's wonderful monster designs, and it's passionate love of this genre. As much as I can certainly find problems with this show and treat it like with how the CW made Bad Flesh episodes, for me, it's comfort food. Sure, the dish is dated in certain elements and it's not perfectly made, but I can feel the love the creators put into this tried and true titan of the past 50 years of Japanese superheroes. Now, could Shout Factory give me more? I'm tired of importing from France. I want to give special thanks to Xavier Poli for the new music intro. It's something he made of his complete own volition without me directly asking. I genuinely appreciate it. As always, it me Noel for the icon. I really also appreciate that, and honestly I've never felt the need to change it. And 3 one-time thanks for Falky for being a helpful cunt in solidifying some ideas. And 2 Discord users I will call Ryder and Minkujo. They are the 2 lads that got me into Toku, and I genuinely appreciate their efforts. Thank you.